Arthur, a millionaire known as much for his fortune as for his generous heart, was driving his luxury car through the busy city streets. At a traffic light, a homeless man tapped lightly on his window, his hand outstretched in a silent plea. Without hesitation, Arthur lowered the window and handed the man a $100 bill. The man's face lit up. "Thank you, sir. I can buy milk for my son now." Arthur smiled, but beside him, his wife, Patricia, wore an expression of pure disgust. As soon as the car moved, she confronted him, her voice as cold as ice. "This habit of yours of giving money to those people, when will you understand that people who live on the street have chosen that path?" The argument that followed was an echo of many they'd had before. Arthur took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "My love, no one chooses to live in misery. Honesty has no social class." But Patricia was adamant, her worldview hardened by a pain she kept locked away. "You're naive, Arthur. He'll go straight to the liquor store, not for milk. You open your window for anyone in a dangerous city like this. One day, one of them will stick a gun in here, and then it will be too late." To her, the world was a hostile place, and compassion, a dangerous weakness she could no longer afford. The conversation was cut short when they parked in front of a designer boutique. As she got out, Patricia's eyes fixed on a boy of about 10, sitting on a piece of cardboard on the sidewalk. He wore sunglasses, too large for his face, and moved with surprising agility to pick up a fallen coin. An idea sparked in her eyes. She got back in the car. "I want to propose a bet," she said to Arthur. "Since you believe so much in their honesty, let's test it. Drop your wallet full of cash near that boy. If he returns it, I'll never complain again. If he doesn't, you stop this street charity." Arthur, confident in the goodness he saw in the world, accepted. Deal. A cruel bet. A test of character, and an innocent child at the center of it all. Can honesty flourish where it's least expected? If you believe in the power of good, subscribe to the channel and like this video to discover the shocking outcome of this story. What Patricia and Arthur didn't know was that the boy on the sidewalk was a ghost from their own lives. The echo of a pain they thought they had buried 10 years ago. In a hospital room, Peter's grandmother, Martha, had looked at her newborn grandson and felt revulsion. The white haze covering the baby's eyes was not, to her, a medical condition, but a stain on the family's perfect lineage. With surgical coldness, she made a decision that would alter 3 destinies forever. She bribed the doctor, announced the baby's death to her devastated daughter and son-in-law, and in the dead of night, delivered the newborn to a distant, forgotten orphanage. Peter was born into wealth, but was condemned to a life of misery by the cruelty of the woman who should have protected him. Peter grew up in a world of shadows, learning to read the world not with his eyes, but with sounds, smells, and the texture of things. The orphanage, with all its hardships, was the only home he ever knew, a fragile refuge that crumbled when lack of funding shut it down, throwing him, still a child, onto the merciless city streets. Life on the asphalt was a daily lesson in survival and humiliation. It was the shop owner who woke him with a bucket of cold water, the elegant woman who cursed at him for stumbling into her, the indifference of thousands of faces that passed him by as if he didn't exist. He wasn't on the street by choice, as Patricia believed, but as the result of a chain of cruelty that began the day he was born. Despite an ocean of rejection, the goodness in Peter's heart remained intact. His moral compass, forged in the simple values he learned at the orphanage, was unshakable. For him, honesty wasn't an option. It was a principle, the only wealth he truly possessed. He found beauty where no one else saw it, in the distant melody of a street musician, in the warmth of the sun on his face, in the rare kindness of a hand that offered him a coin without contempt. That boy, sitting on his cardboard, was a small beacon of integrity in a world that had only offered him darkness. This was the truth that Patricia, in her bitterness, could not see, but that Arthur's soul somehow sensed. Arthur got out of the car, the leather wallet weighing in his hand like an instrument of judgment. From the passenger seat, Patricia raised her phone, the cold lens of the camera ready to capture the proof of her cynical worldview. She was not a spectator. She was the director of this small, cruel theater of truth. With firm steps, Arthur walked past Peter and at the exact moment dropped the wallet to the ground with a muffled thud. He didn't look back, just kept walking, his heart torn between the hope of being right and the fear that his wife was. The boy turned his head toward the sound, his hands fumbling across the concrete until they found the object. The trap was set. Patricia's camera, unforgiving, recorded every detail. The video showed Peter opening the wallet, his fingers feeling the thickness of the bills. In a quick, discreet, almost imperceptible movement, he removed the cash, tucked it into the pocket of his worn shorts, closed the now empty wallet, and hid it. To the eye that does not see the heart, the scene was a condemnation. It was the act of an experienced thief, efficient in his dishonesty. Arthur, glancing over his shoulder, only saw that the boy remained in his spot, motionless, and felt a weight in his stomach. Disappointment was a bitter taste in his mouth as he walked back to the car, the silence of defeat already enveloping him. As soon as Arthur closed the door, Patricia's triumphant smile lit up the car's interior. "I told you," she said, her voice dripping with superiority. She showed him the recording. "Look, he didn't even hesitate. He felt the money and took it. It's their nature, Arthur. Poverty is a character flaw." The video was the proof she wanted, the validation of her hopeless world. For her, there was no other possible interpretation. The image confirmed her belief that compassion was an invitation to be deceived and that goodness, in the end, was just a fool's fantasy. The bet was won, and with it, the right to mold her husband into her own cynical image. Arthur watched the video, the sadness in his eyes deeper than the loss of money. It was the loss of a small wager in favor of humanity. "Maybe you're right," he murmured, his voice low and defeated. Patricia, victorious, made a move to get out of the car. "I'm going to get your money back. That brat doesn't deserve a single cent." But Arthur stopped her. "No," he said with surprising firmness. "Let it go. We're not going to humiliate a child over this. It's just money." Even in apparent defeat, his innate compassion refused to die. They drove off, leaving behind a boy they both now believed to be a thief, never imagining that the true test of honesty was yet to come, far from their sight. The luxury car departed, leaving Peter alone with the weight of a fortune that was not his. The narrator, now his accomplice, reveals the truth that Patricia's camera could not capture. The boy had secured the money in one pocket and the wallet elsewhere for a clever reason, born from the harsh experience of the streets. It was safer. If someone tried to rob him, they wouldn't get everything at once. With the treasure protected, he remained seated on his cardboard, motionless. His strategy was simple: to wait. The owner will come back looking for it, he thought, his childish heart filled with an adult responsibility. He sharpened his hearing, trying to filter the city sounds for a distressed voice, for someone retracing their steps. But hours passed, and the busy sidewalk brought no one. As the afternoon waned, hunger, his constant companion, began to scream louder. The smell of food from nearby restaurants was torture, and the wad of cash in his pocket felt like it was burning. The temptation was a treacherous voice in his mind, whispering how easy it would be. A hot meal, a safe night, new shoes, no one would ever know. He, who had never had anything, deserved it. But in the court of his conscience, another voice, stronger and clearer, rose up. It was the voice of his own integrity. "This money isn't mine. The person who lost it must need it badly, and I am not a thief." The decision for him was simple, though painful. With his stomach rumbling, he gathered the few coins he had earned that day and approached a fruit vendor. He bought a bruised banana and a soft apple, receiving a look of contempt in return. In a hidden alley, he ate his humble meal, which for him tasted of the victory of his character. His most urgent hunger sated, he took out the wallet again, his nimble, sensitive fingers exploring every compartment for a clue. And then he felt it, a different kind of paper, thicker and rectangular, a business card. He couldn't read it, but he knew what it meant. It was a key, a map. A new wave of determination washed over him. He was no longer just waiting. Now he had a mission. With the card in hand, Peter knew he needed help. Overcoming the fear of another rejection, he returned to the fruit stand, where the vendor was packing up to leave. "Sir, sorry to bother you again," the boy said, his voice low and respectful. "Could you read for me what's written on this paper?" The man took the card with a grumble, but his impatient expression turned to curiosity as he saw the elegant material. Under the dim light of a lamppost, he adjusted his glasses and began to decipher the golden letters. That simple request for help was an immense act of courage, a bet on the residual kindness of a world that rarely showed him its good side. Law offices of Arthur. "Wallace," the vendor read, surprised. "72 Flower Street, downtown." He looked at the boy. "Kid, this is one of the most powerful law firms in the city." Peter didn't know it, but the name on the card was the same as the man who, hours earlier, had used him as a pawn in a cruel game. The information, however, lit a spark of hope in his heart. He thanked the vendor and left, repeating the address in his mind like a sacred mantra. He now had a destination, a mission. The seed of the turnabout was planted. The path to return what wasn't his was, ironically, leading him back to the source of his trial. While Peter slept in the open, holding on to his mission, dinner was being served in the luxurious mansion of Arthur and Patricia. Patricia's mother, Martha, a matriarch with a cold gaze and impeccable posture, noticed the tension in the air. "What's wrong? You seem down, Arthur," she asked. Before he could answer, Patricia interjected with a victorious smile. "It's nothing, Mother. Just a bet that Arthur, in his naivety, just lost." With ill-disguised pleasure, she narrated the episode of the wallet, framing the outcome as the definitive proof of the inherent dishonesty of the poor, a lesson her husband needed to learn once and for all. Martha's reaction was the seed that revealed the true nature of evil in that family. She didn't just agree with her daughter, she amplified the prejudice with an icy conviction. "It's about time you realize the truth, Arthur," she said, her voice cutting. "Those people are worthless. They're all a burden on society." There was a venom in her words that went beyond simple classism. It was a deep, almost personal revulsion. She spoke of how the family had ascended to the elite and the need to keep themselves pure, distant from the filth of the outside world. A chill ran down Arthur's spine. This wasn't just the speech of an arrogant woman, it was the echo of something much darker. A boy's honesty is about to collide with a family's prejudice, but an even greater evil lurks in the shadows. If you've ever felt you were fighting against forces you didn't understand, share your story in the comments and subscribe to the channel to see the truth revealed. The next morning, Peter began his pilgrimage. For a blind child alone, crossing the city was an epic journey. Every sidewalk was a labyrinth, every traffic light a sonic puzzle, every crowd a dangerous ocean. Ignored by most, treated with hostility by others, he persisted, guided only by the memorized address and an unshakable moral compass. The money in his pocket was not a temptation, but a burden of responsibility he carried with honor. This was not just a walk, it was a testament to his character. The journey of a pure soul through a world that insisted on judging him by the darkness in his eyes, without seeing the light in his heart. Upon arriving at the imposing glass building, Peter's relief was short-lived. A security guard intercepted him with the brutality reserved for undesirables. "What's a punk like you doing here? Get out!" the man shouted, grabbing him by the arm. In the scuffle, his precious sunglasses fell to the marble floor and were crushed under the guard's boot. That sound of shattering glass was the sound of his small world of protection being destroyed. And as if destiny had written the script, at that exact moment, Arthur and Patricia walked into the lobby. They came upon the scene. The boy on the floor, the guard, triumphant. "What is going on here?" Patricia asked, irritated by the commotion. The guard let go of Peter, who knelt to pick up the pieces of his glasses. A sob caught in his throat. Moved by instant compassion, Arthur knelt beside him, and that's when the world stopped. Without the sunglasses, he saw the boy's eyes for the first time, the milky white haze that covered his irises. The truth hit him like a punch to the gut. "He's blind." Patricia, recognizing the boy from the bet, also saw. Her cynical smile from the day before vanished, replaced by a mask of pure shock. The boy she had filmed and condemned as a cunning thief could barely see. The cruelty of her test was revealed in all its monstrosity, and shame began to suffocate her. Still sobbing, Peter pulled the wallet from his pocket. He held it out in the direction of Arthur's voice. "Sir, I swear I'm not a thief. I only came to return this. Someone dropped it near me yesterday, but since I can't see, I didn't know who." Arthur took the wallet with a trembling hand. He opened it and saw that all the money was still there, untouched. The blind boy, who had nothing in the world, had crossed the entire city to return a fortune to a stranger. The force of that revelation, the purity of that act, broke something inside Arthur. He could no longer hold himself up. There, on the marble floor of his empire, the millionaire collapsed, crying like a child, stripped of all his wealth except for the lesson in humanity he had just received. Peter's honesty shattered Patricia's armor. The cynical, cold woman disappeared, giving way to a maternal strength she thought had died long ago. With an assertive kindness, she took charge of the situation. She comforted the boy, bought him new clothes, and took him to the best optician in the city, ensuring the new glasses were perfect. Later, in a restaurant, she watched him eat with the veracity of someone who didn't know tomorrow, and something inside her was rebuilt. Each gesture of care was a step away from the bitterness that had consumed her for a decade. That boy, with his purity, hadn't just returned a wallet. He was, without knowing it, returning her own lost humanity. That night at the mansion, Arthur found Patricia watching Peter sleep in the guest room. "It's so good to see you like this again, my love," he whispered. With her eyes full of tears, she finally revealed the source of her pain and her transformation. "I don't know how to explain it. Arthur, it's as if this boy—" Her voice failed. Arthur, understanding what she couldn't say, finished the sentence, verbalizing the ghost that haunted their marriage. "I know. He's the same age our son would be today." The revelation hung in the air, connecting Arthur's compassion and Patricia's awakening to the open wound of losing the baby they were told had died at birth, a tragedy that shaped who they had become. Moved by this inexplicable connection, they took him to the best ophthalmologist in the country. The diagnosis was congenital cataracts, but it came with a word Peter never dared to dream of: hope. "There's a surgery," the doctor explained. "I can't promise 100% vision, but yes, he will be able to see." For a boy who knew the world only through shadows and sounds, the promise of seeing someone's face, of reading a word, was an overwhelming emotion. The tears that streamed down his face were not of sadness, but of pure, stunning joy. Without hesitation, Arthur and Patricia assured him they would pay for the entire treatment. That boy was no longer a test or an act of charity. He was a cause, a mission. That night, feeling a wave of maternal instincts, Patricia went up to the dusty attic, looking for an old baby blanket to give to Peter. In a forgotten chest, her hand found a small, leather-bound diary. It was her mother's diary, Martha. Curiosity led her to open it to the pages from 10 years ago, around the time of her son's birth. What began as a nostalgic reading quickly turned into a nightmare. Her mother's words, written with a calculating coldness, described not the pain of loss, but the horror at her grandson's imperfection. With every line, a monstrous truth began to take shape, and the air in the attic became thin, heavy, and suffocating. Patricia fell to her knees on the wooden floor, the diary trembling in her hands. The pages revealed the cruel plan in sordid detail. The lie about the baby's death, the bribe to the doctor, and the final act of handing her own grandson over to a distant orphanage so he would never be found again. The pieces fit together with brutal clarity. Peter's age, his congenital blindness, the visceral and inexplicable connection they felt for him. It wasn't a coincidence, it was fate correcting an atrocious injustice. A silent scream tore through her soul. The boy sleeping in her guest room was not just any orphan they had decided to help. He was her son, the son she had mourned for a decade. With the diary in hand as a weapon of truth, Patricia and Arthur confronted Martha. In the sumptuous living room, Patricia read aloud the cruel words her own mother had written, unmasking the lie that had shaped her life for a decade. Cornered by her own crime, Martha's body could not bear the weight of the truth. She collapsed, the victim of a sudden ailment, and in her last breaths, the confession came, not of remorse, but of pure, defeated hatred. Justice did not need poison. The truth by itself was lethal. The matriarch who built her world on a foundation of cruelty was consumed by her own darkness, leaving behind the wreckage of a family she tried to destroy. Running to the garden, they found Peter playing, oblivious to the earthquake that had just occurred. Kneeling before him, Patricia hugged him with the force of 10 years of longing. "Peter, my son, we are your parents," she whispered, her voice choked. With tears and words that healed old wounds, they told him the whole story, the lie that separated them, the fate that reunited them. For the boy who never had a home, who never knew a mother's touch, the revelation was the rewriting of his own soul. The embrace that followed was the end of a decade of mourning and the beginning of a lifetime of love, the lost piece of the family puzzle finally fitting into its rightful place. Weeks later, in a hospital room, the final miracle happened. The doctor removed the bandages from Peter's eyes. The light came in, first as a blur, then gaining shapes, colors, contours. And the first image his brain registered with clarity was the faces of Arthur and Patricia, smiling at him, bathed in tears of joy. "I can see," he whispered, amazed. "You're beautiful." In that moment, he didn't just gain physical sight, but the vision of a future he never knew he could have. And for his parents, seeing the son they thought was dead, see them for the first time, was the final healing, the closing of a cycle of pain and the birth of pure happiness. The journey that began with a cynical bet to prove the dishonesty of the poor ended with the discovery that the greatest treasure, a lost son, was found through the purest act of integrity. Patricia, transformed by the experience, used her fortune to create a foundation to help children from the streets and orphanages, ensuring that no other life would be considered imperfect or disposable. The family, once broken by pain, was now complete, forged in truth and forgiveness. For true vision is not the ability to see the world with one's eyes, but to recognize the value of a heart with one's soul. A story of reunion that proves that honesty can change destinies. If your heart was touched by the journey of Peter and his family, subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from. Let's spread the message that every life has immeasurable value,